What's up, guys? It's Benny. We have now gone from strange to even stranger with the pipe bomber confessing to federal authorities that he did indeed plant the pipe bombs on January 6th. So now not only do you have a full confession, you have motive. He says that he's a Trump supporter. What? He says that he was mad about the stolen election and that he was trying to take vengeance or something out. But, I mean, this is wild. So let me just start from the beginning what we are now expected to believe, that this young black man who has absolutely no prior connection, as far as we know, to President Trump or the MAGA movement, somebody who has scant, if any, digital footprint at all, was totally radicalized, even though his family, which he works for in a bail bonds company that does bail bonds for criminal aliens, his family, which has sued the Trump administration multiple times, and then sued the Biden administration for racism, which is, obviously coded in left-wing ideology and social justice activism and racial justice activism, that this individual, this allegedly loner individual, was so angry and so upset about the 2020 election results that he made bombs, but then he started buying the bomb parts like years before he ever planted the bombs? What is that? What the hell's going on? I mean, the confession, I suppose, is a good thing. That begins to now narrow the window as to who. But now we need the what and the why. So here's the most recent reporting on the confession. Apparently the feds have him copping to it, saying, yes, I'm the guy in the backpack that planted the bombs. Here we go.
Good morning, Anna. My colleague Carol Lenig and I have learned from multiple sources that this suspect has essentially confessed to planting the bombs, and he's told FBI agents that he is a supporter of Donald Trump. But they've also gathered evidence that he has anarchist leanings. And so what they're saying is the motive here, the drivers of this act, are not entirely clear, and they're expressing caution about drawing any conclusions about any of this information. They say that they have assessed that he has antisocial tendencies. Remember, he lived alone with his parents. Neighbors have described him as quiet and shy. So a lot remains unclear. But the key thing is that he's confessed. They appear to have solved this case after 5 long years of trying to gather evidence on it.
So, Tom, your reaction to this new reporting, an apparent confession?
I'm not surprised. When you look at the affidavit that was filed in court yesterday, they had an overwhelming amount of evidence that linked this individual to this crime. Not only his purchasing history, but they had his phone pinging on cell towers in that area during that time. And then the icing on the cake was they had a license plate reader that came off of one of the interstates that comes right up to the Capitol, and had his license plate passing through that license plate reader on that day as well. So when typically when you're going to interview a suspect in a case, you'll present some of the evidence, not all of it, but some of the evidence that you have, which oftentimes makes them think they've got me, I might as well confess. So I think that when presented with all of this, my guess is he knew that he was caught.
Mark, Brian Cole Jr. is going to be in federal court this afternoon. What are we expecting?
Well, cameras are not allowed in federal court, but we'll have a team inside. They're going to give us the step-by-step. Cole Jr. will face a judge. There's going to be a formal reading of the charges. An attorney will be assigned to him if he needs an attorney. He's also going to face those charges of leaving the pipe bombs outside the RNC DNC on January 5th, 2021. It's expected, Anna, this will be a quick proceeding. The judge will then decide, does he set bail, or will he be remanded into custody? We're going to find out in just a few hours.
So what happens next? Now, we need the answers to all of the rest of the cascade of questions. We talked about it pretty extensively on the show this morning. Was he being operated? Is this somebody who had been radicalized? Is this somebody who, just like we saw with the Gretchen Whitmer Fednapping, just like we've seen in other foiled federal plots, is this an individual who was being run as a patsy in order to manipulate the news environment and the political environment to attack MAGA? No, I don't know. His family's saying, I can't believe that this is happening. You know, his family's out saying, yo, like his grandmother, family statements, like he wouldn't hurt a fly. This is somebody who like doesn't really have a social life. He's spectrumy. This is an individual that doesn't have a violent past or history. And so, you know, like clearly you got the wrong guy. But then he confesses. The whole thing makes absolutely no sense. So what are we to take from all of this? Well, what we need here and what is mandatory is more information. Now, that is what we've been promised after the arraignment today. We've been promised that there's going to be an avalanche of new information from the FBI, from the feds, from Dan Bongino and from Kash Patel, who were both on TV last night saying, listen, not only will there be a ton more information about what's going on here, but also you're going to see the failures of the Biden FBI in trying to find this individual. Now, this is like complicated the whole thing because I was under the impression that this would be like some far left. This was a far left radical, just based on the family, the history, who he was operating with, who he was working with. I was under the impression that this was something that was like, you know, this was clearly a leftist that was trying to hurt the MAGA movement. Why would you want to bomb your own movement? This was where MAGA was going to be marching the next day. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. If you're such a ardent Trump supporter, why would you put a bomb at the RNC? That doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense right now. So we have to wait for more information. Here's what Kash and Dan are out saying, at least last night, about what we're going to get.
Trace, you're going to learn a lot more about him coming up in the next 24 hours because what's going to happen is he's going to make his first court appearance. He's going to have to be arraigned, and he's going to have to be subjected to the formal charging process. And once that happens, we'll be able to speak more clearly to the public about what we found. But what I'll remind the audience is this suspect was just 25 years old at the time of the alleged pipe bomb incident, not an old person at all, not someone with extensive history necessarily in the criminal justice system. But I think what we'll find in the coming days, maybe even just by tomorrow, is the amount of resources that you have to put into this. Generally speaking, and not stylizing the evidence in this case, you got to go out and buy pipes. You got to go out and buy end caps. You got to go out and buy sulfur. You got to go out and buy wires. Then you got to figure out how to put that all together successfully. And remember, thankfully, these devices didn't go off, but they could have gone off. They were ready to go off. And so that was a disaster that was averted, thankfully, saving the lives of, hundreds of people around the United States Capitol. And so that's what we were able to hone in on as investigators and FBI agents in the field let out on that and said, let's go figure out who's buying this stuff and how they're using it and how they're learning how to do it. And I think you're going to get a lot more information as to the how, the why, the when, and the where, and the planning in the coming days.
Sean, I don't know what the hell this prior leadership team was doing outside of, targeting political opponents, weaponizing the FBI, destroying its reputation, embarrassing agents that are doing really good work out there, catching terrorists, CCP spies, and everyone else. It's almost like they were intentionally trying to decimate faith in institutions. It's horrifying. I don't know what they were doing. I can tell you what happened, though, when we got there. The director and I. My first meeting, I swore in, and I kid you not, probably 15 minutes later, and the people who are in the meeting know, I said, when I get in there, I want a full brief on this pipe bomber case on day one. And I looked at the case agent after getting a full brief on what they'd done, and they had done a pretty extensive amount of work. They had chased down, I think, thousands of leads, 6,000 plus interviews had been conducted, hundreds of tips. And it still was relatively stale, the case. And I grabbed the case agent on the way out, and I said, "You're going to get me this guy. You're going to track this guy down, and you're going to find him. You're going to get me this guy. I want him." And that started what's been almost a 9-month operation right now to make sure that we could get full accountability and transparency to the American public and find this guy. And today we did.